Good day or good evening, dear friends and listeners. You are, of course, listening to Red Eyes Radio. I'm Henrik Palmgren from Sweden, and we are glad to have you with us as we navigate the ocean of information uncertainty. There is indeed a nest of artificial constructs out there, and there is also a lot of interesting research and work, and we discuss and question many of the topics that we highlight and try to learn as much as we can and help to inform you, our listeners, along the way as we do so. If you go to redicecreations.com, we have much more for you, much more to learn there. Sofia Smallstorm is back with us, returning after just a few weeks to discuss her work on the tie-in between chemtrails and synthetic biology. Sofia is known for her research on 9/11, which culminated in the documentary 9/11 Mysteries. We are going to talk about some of the concepts behind the geoengineering agenda and weather modification, and also explore how this connects with Morgellons disease, transhumanism, and the bigger buried agenda behind robotics, genetics, nanotechnology, and artificial intelligence. Welcome back again, Sofia. Nice to have you back so soon. Thank you for taking the time talking with us. Always lovely to have you on, so thank you for being here.
Oh, well, I have to thank you, Henrik. I love listening to your show, and now I'm actually being part of it as a guest, so that's a big honor.
We, again, talked a little bit about this before, that the shutdown of the environment, at least in certain areas, it seems to be kind of sporadic. It's a generality, I guess, around the globe, but in certain areas, it's definitely more prevalent than in others. So what impact does this have on the environment?
Well, again, the formation of the artificial cloud masses is only one part of it. Then there's the concentration of the artificial cloud masses into an area where they are destabilized and they pour down in the form of torrents of rain, causing floods. Now, I'm going to draw everybody's attention to a YouTube channel that has the secret to this next phase of man-made weather, and it is WeatherWar101. So WeatherWar is one word, WeatherWar, space 101. Look that up on YouTube and take his instructional tutorial. Scroll down on the channel page to Geoengineering 101. I think it's called. I'm looking for it. I just did a newsletter on it. Mm-hmm. And this person has watched the radar maps, okay? They don't give us satellite pictures of weather anymore, if you notice. They give us these graphics, these radar maps. And where you see the swirling cloud vortices, the huge, tornado here and hurricane forming there and whatnot, wherever they actually have a storm, and we've had some giant storms in the last few years, they're all man-made, and at the center of them you will find a NEXRAD tower. So what is NEXRAD? It's a form of radar. It's the new form of radar. It's Doppler-based. And the two things that WeatherWar brings us in terms of new knowledge are the fact that these NEXRAD towers are in the very eye of these man-made storms. So that's clue number one. And clue number two, which actually goes backward in this unfolding that I'm giving you, is that we have an abundance of power plants all over the world today, not just all over the country. And I had seen these for years. I never knew what they were. I'd be driving along the freeway and I'd see these tall smokestacks and I would think to myself, factories. Yeah, those are factories. And they'd be pumping out, belching out huge amounts of what looked like pollution. Huge amounts of gray smoke, white smoke. And I'd think to myself, wow, that is a busy factory. What does it make? And I would think, why aren't people screaming about this ugly stuff that's pouring out of these chimneys? And I found out later from WeatherWar that those are not factories. They're power plants. And what they are releasing into the atmosphere is millions and millions and millions of gallons of steam. So this is a technology called WSAC, Wet Surface Air Cooler. And the operation is known as direct steam condensing for power generation using closed-loop evaporative WSAC technology. So these power plants are using water to create, again, on the surface electricity, but they're releasing huge, huge quantities of steam into the atmosphere.
Yep.
And this is the source of the water vapor for chemtrails. Now, I was staggered when I learned this. And when you see these things working at night, it's not that there's a night shift going on in factories because it's such a busy industry for whatever they're making. It's because this is the time when people are least likely to notice. And there are areas, if you look at Google Maps and you look for power plants in various cities, you'll see how they're all clustered together. In the Midwest, where they have tons of these storms and chemtrails, you will see sometimes huge power plants within a few blocks of one another. There'll be 3 or 4 of them with the tall chimneys. And WeatherWar wrote me an email in which he said, they tell us to turn off the water while toothbrushing, but meanwhile a water system traverses this country that produces enough vapor to drive a global artificial weather system.
Yep.
Just another spectacular example of the hoodwinking of the human species.
Well, exactly. Yeah, I was going to say they complain on the people who drive by in their little Nissan or something instead of looking at these factories or the war industry or what have you. But yeah, definitely carry on.
So this was very new to me, that I didn't realize how integrated the chemtrail, you could say, business is into our society. The power plants are evidently doing it, being part of it, because this is the Earth's topography is drying out, so there isn't that much in the way of natural evaporation anymore, and there has to be an artificial source of water for this enormous weather system, and it's evidently coming from these factories, which are not factories, power plants. And this is, I'm still trying to digest all this. But what happens is you get this atmospheric moisture pumped skyward. That mixes with the particulates that are disseminated in the air by, the planes, for lack of a better word. And then they form the cloud masses, and then through Doppler, this NEXRAD system, they mobilize these cloud masses and they push them into areas where they concentrate them, and then they dump them. And then you have a flood, and everybody loses their house, and everybody has to move, and everybody's all freaked out. And so, there is a big research company in England, Aon Benfield Hazard Research Center, and they research global geophysical events. And we're getting bigger and bigger storms, and people are being encouraged to insure themselves against these calamities. So there's a lot of profit-driven motive here, along with, we can get into this later, but the whole concept of population control.
Right.
Basically, in environmental fallout, you will find 3 different kinds of components today. You'll find metallic salts, You'll find fibers that are not identifiable. They're not natural. There's nothing in any lab database that explains what these are. And then you'll find engineered biologicals. And the way that chemtrails form into cloud masses that are quite stable and can stay in place for a long time, I'm looking at some right now, that has to do with some research that came out of Hebrew University in Jerusalem. The atmospheric scientist Daniel Rosenfeld was the first to point out, and this is all euphemistic, understand, that pollution stops rain, meaning that where you find very, very small particulates that are pollution, basically, man-made, you will not have much rainfall, because the whole concept of condensation is around condensation nuclei. So in nature, little tiny droplets form above the earth from atmospheric moisture that is drawn to particulates, and those natural particulates would be salt or dust that kind of waft upward with the wind, evaporation, and so forth. And when the droplets get big enough, they will become unstable and they'll fall to the earth as rain. So anyway, the idea that man-made particulates could do something similar is what this research is about. And again, in the mainstream media, they keep it to that. Pollution stops rain. Those were the big headlines.
Mm-hmm.
All you have to do is turn on 1 watt in your brain, and you say to yourself, wow, well, they must have figured out that if you spray particulates in the air, particularly those that are that have an affinity for water, namely salts, and this is where you get the metallic salts, aluminum oxide, barium oxide, titanium oxide. These oxides are what are known as metallic salts, and they draw water to them. So this is how you get the chem mass up there in the sky. You have sprayed particulates from planes or whatever you want to believe is spraying them, and then you've got the what gloms onto them is the atmospheric moisture, and the finer the particulate, this is the golden rule of making chemtrails, the finer the particulate, the more stable the drop. So when you can engineer minute particulates of these metallic oxides, you will get white haze. And that's basically how it's done.
Like nanoparticles then, maybe. The smaller they are, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sure.
Later, huh?
Right, later. Just
after we go. Okay, the real rock.
I got something to say. I want to know how come the fascist pigs have been seeding the clouds.
Right, the last hour
I've seen the airplanes going over twice with all the smoke coming out of them seeding the clouds, and I want to know, why that stuff is going down, man. And why doesn't the media report that stuff to the people, man? I'm telling you what happened. The planes come over
for an hour and a half
and they
during the
seeded all the
concert at
clouds.
Woodstock.
This is the second time they did
People
this
of
today.
unknown origin were seeding the clouds over the.
You know, I don't know what they hope to prove, man.
What's going on here?
Well, I don't think. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I'm coming up here and I'm all stuck away.